Hello everyone. Welcome to CAT 2024 Slot 3. My name is Abhilasha and we'll start with the analysis and the discussion of the paper. So let us take a look. The interesting thing about Slot 3 was that because the questions were jumbled, all of us got a different set and it was very, very interesting. I started with a set of verbal ability questions, which of course is something that I really like, and therefore I found the paper to be very exciting. In the first few minutes, I was able to do quite a bit of the questions. So yes, that was something that really was a game changer this time, I think, for a lot of us, because as we say, a lot of times we want to start with verbal ability and then come to reading comprehension, because verbal ability can give us a bank of scores. So that's what I did, and I hope that's what a lot of other people also did who were writing slot 3. Anyway, let's get started. Here's question number 1. Very interesting question. So this one was about lyric poetry. So let's read and let's understand, and we'll try and go to the options and see what is the correct answer. So the question did say that 4 alternate summaries were given after this passage, and you had to find the one that best captures the essence of the passage. So let's read and understand the passage. It says, lyric poetry is a genre of private meditation rather than public commitment. So the author talks about something called lyric poetry. Okay, and he says that it is more about private meditation, okay, private thought, than about public thought. Okay, so it's less about public issues and more about privacy, private thought, private meditation. The impulse in Marxism towards changing a society deemed acceptable in its basic design would seem to place demands on lyric poetry that such poetry, with its tendency towards the personal, small scale, and idiosyncratic, could never answer. So one, we started with lyric poetry and we said it's very private. Then we came to the second thought and we said, here is Marxism. Now, Marxism is, the impulse in Marxism is towards changing society, right? So now this is a very public thought process. Here was lyric poetry, which was very private, and here is Marxism, which is trying to change society. So their basic idea is all about public commitment, all about changing, all about public good. Now, if Marxism happens, then Marxism is going to place demands or may ask of lyric poetry things that lyric poetry would not be able to answer. So essentially what we are saying is, what is Marxism and what is lyric poetry are absolutely different. There's nothing really common between the two. Okay, so we say, let me write that, nothing common. Okay, then he says, then the author says here, there is within Marxism, however, now we know that whenever the author gives you a but yet or a however, there's going to be some change in thought, right? So here is something very interesting. He says, within Marxism, there is a strand of thought. So within Marxism, we have one thought that would locate in lyric poetry. So that will find in lyric poetry what? Alternative modes of perception and description that call forth a vision of world at odds with the repressive reality, or that draw attention to the workings of the ideology within the hegemonic culture. Now, so here is something that is similar. So in Marxism, there is a stream of thought, which says that lyric poetry is very interesting because it allows you to see another perspective. Okay, it is allowing you what? Alternative modes of perception and description. So lyric poetry allows you some alternate viewpoints. Okay, let me write that. And he says the poetic imagination may indeed deflect larger social concerns. So lyric poetry may not talk about the larger social concerns, but it may also be implicitly critical and utopian. So he says, so one, that Marxism does have one stream of thought which appreciates lyric poetry, excuse me. And then he says this lyric poetry may not talk about larger social concerns, but it may be critical and okay, so it may be critical about society and it may be utopian. So it may have dreams of, making a better world and so on and so forth. Now, if you look at our options, option number 1 says Marxism makes unreasonable demands on lyric poetry. But if you look at the passage did not say anywhere that Marxism was making unreasonable demands. This idea did not come into play at all. Okay. And then he goes on to say, however, lyric poetry has its own merits that are largely ignored by Marxism. Again, were things being largely ignored by Marxism due to its personal nature? Now, the problem is whose personal nature? Is it Marxism's personal nature? But Marxism, we have said, is very social. It is not personal at all. So, therefore, one cannot be the right answer. We'll eliminate it. If we look at option number 2, it says the focus of lyric poetry as personal may not seem compatible. So, they're different, right? Marxism and lyric poetry. And then he says, however, it is possible to envisage lyric poetry as a symbol of resistance against an oppressive culture. So he says that you may be able to see the lyrical poetry as critical and utopian, right? So this is a possible answer for us. I'm not saying this is a very good answer. I'm going to put a star on this and we'll take a look at the next one. Option number 3 says the focus of lyric poetry is largely personal, okay, while that of Marxism is bringing change in society. Okay, so this is very clear. That is largely personal. This is bringing social change. Unless the difference is resolved, poetry will remain largely utopian. The passage did not ask you to resolve the difference. So therefore, 3 is incorrect because it is bringing out facts which are not mentioned in the passage. Remember, a summary is just a summation of everything that's mentioned in the passage. You cannot add extra things. Option number 4, Marxism has internal contradictions, due to which one strand of Marxism sees no merit in lyric poetry, while another appreciates the alternative modes of perception in poetry. Now, the fact that Marxism has internal contradictions is not very clearly brought out. It says that there is one strand, one stream of thought in Marxism that appreciates lyric poetry, that says lyric poetry may have alternative modes of perception and description. So, to say that Marxism has internal contradictions, and because of those contradictions, one strand is not seeing any merit while another is appreciating, this causal relationship again is not mentioned in the passage, right? So if there is this causal relationship in my option, that does not make it correct. So the only option that really works for us here is option number 2, and that's why that becomes the correct answer here. I hope you got that. Thank you so much. We'll go to the next question. Question number 2, very interesting sentence placement question. And this was one of the questions that I remembered after the exam also very, very clearly. Why? Because it was talking about this napalm girl picture, right? So remember sentence placement, a sentence is given to you. You're supposed to place it in between. Very, very simple. Now, taken outside the village of Trangbank, the picture. Now, the minute I saw the picture, I knew that there had to be a link to this. And I was trying to look for where where the link is. Okay. So, taken outside the village of Trangbank, the picture captured the trauma and indiscriminate violence of a conflict. Which conflict? That had claimed 1 million or more civilian lives. The horrifying photograph of children fleeing a deadly napalm attack has become a defining image not only of the Vietnam War but also the 20th century. Okay, so it's a defining image. Dark smoke billowing behind them. Who is this them? Of course, the children that we are talking about. So there is a very beautiful connect here. So blank one is not really a place that I can put my sentence, because this pronoun really clearly refers to the children who are fleeing the deadly napalm attack. The young subjects' faces are painted with a mixture of terror, pain, and confusion. Soldiers from South Vietnamese Army 25th generation 25th division follow helplessly behind. Again, these two sentences also are connected. So again, blank 2, I cannot put anyone. I'm eliminating blank 1, blank 2. Okay, now I have option 3 and option number 4. Now look at the sentence after blank 3. It starts with saying the picture was officially titled The Terror of War, but the photo is better known by the nickname given to the naked girl at its center, the Napalm Girl. Now, my problem is where to put this sentence, to put it in blank number 3 or to put it in blank number 4. And that's all I need to worry about. Now, when we look at the sentence, it's very clear. If you look at the given sentence, it says, taken outside the village of Trang Bang, the picture captured the trauma and indiscriminate violence of a conflict. So we are already talking of this conflict, and this conflict is mentioned in the previous 2-3 sentences here, where we say dark smoke is billowing behind them. These children are, their faces are a mixture of terror, pain, and confusion. The soldiers are following helplessly behind. Okay. So now we continue with the description of the picture, that the picture captures the trauma and the indiscriminate violence of a conflict that killed so many people. And then we say that the picture was officially titled The Terror of War, but it is better known by the name The Napalm Girl. So 3 is a very good place to put our sentence, because it describes that the whole scenario very beautifully. There's that continuation of the description in 3. 4 then sort of is not the right place, because 4 we've already spoken about everything that we had to speak about the description of the photo. So the 4th sentence is like, the photograph is already discussed. Now we are saying that the Napalm Girl was that 9-year-old child at the center. So now we must talk about something, maybe related to the child or whatever. So 4 is not a very good place for us to put the sentence. Now this question, the options were jumbled. So you had to make sure that you checked that it was option number 1, that was your answer, which said option 3 or blank 3. So that is how the correct answer would go. All right, let's go to the next question. Question number 3 in this set is again an alternative summary. You have to identify. Now this one was a slightly tricky one. So if you have done this slot, you know that this was the tricky set, and therefore you had to pay attention to this set. Let's read and let's understand. So it says, when the trad wife put on that Georgic pinstripe dress, she's not just admiring the visual cues of a fantastical past. She takes these dreams of storybook bliss literally, tracing them backward in time until she reaches a logical conclusion that satisfies her. So there is somebody called a trad wife. Okay. I don't know what she is, but I'm not bothered by the word. So this trad wife, when she wears a particular pinstriped dress, it's not just that she is imagining or thinking of a beautiful past. She is thinking of the beautiful, fantastic past. Fantastical means imaginary, right? So beautiful past that she is thinking of. But she is also doing something. She takes that dream and she traces it backwards till she reaches a satisfactory conclusion, till she reaches a conclusion that makes her happy, that tells her, yes, this is correct. And when she does this, when she reaches this conclusion, she ends up delivering an unhappy reminder of just how much our lives consist of artifice and play acting. So when this trad wife is reaching that conclusion about the past, her own conclusion that the past had to be something like this, then she reminds us of the artificialness. Artifice is fake behavior, right? So artificialness of our lives and the play acting, the drama, the mockery that our lives is all about. So that's a reminder to us. The trad wife outrages people also because of her deliberately regressive ideals. So people get angry, they're outraged because she does this. She may or may not be really regressive, but deliberately she becomes regressive. So people don't like her. And yet, the minute I see that and yet, I'm like, okay, and yet her behavior is on some level indistinguishable from the non-trad wives. So her behavior, trad wife's behavior, is the same as the non-trad wife behavior also. So that's the contrast that comes in. Oh, that's a very strange thing. The trad wife's trollish genius is to beat us up at our own dress-up game. So she is very wicked and she's beating us at our own game. Okay. So she beats you at your own game. Okay. Then she says, by insisting that the idyllic cottage daydream should be real, right down to the primitive gender role, she leaves others feeling hollow and cheated. So she kind of is like a mirror. So when she insists, no, that men have to be men, women have to be women, and there is this idyllic daydream, the perfect life, the others who've been talking about this thing or sort of suggesting that women should do that, they feel hollow. So that hollowness comes up. Okay. The hullabaloo and the headache she causes may be the price we pay for taking too many things at face value. So when she causes this noise, this hullabaloo, this, much ado about nothing, is the price or is possibly the price we pay when we take things at face value. Okay. So that's the problem. We are taking too many things at face value, and therefore we are now faced with the result of that. Are just desserts. Just dessert means now what you deserved. Served Instagram perfect by a manicured hand on a gorgeous ceramic dish with fat, mouth-watering maraschino cherries on top. So you're now getting what you deserved. So you are getting what you deserve. Now, whether you deserve the good things or the bad things, if you've been asking for the bad things, you will get that. And that's your thought. Now, this entire passage essentially talks about what? It says that if you're looking for superficiality, the trad wife is giving you the superficiality, right? And then you can't say you're sorry about it or that you don't want it. So that's what this paragraph is all about. If you look at our options, let's go from option number 1, the trad wife with her vintage dress and traditional role. So she is bringing these, highlights what? The superficiality of modern life, that okay, your life is very superficial, and challenges current societal norms. So if people want men to be men and women to be women, then she is bringing that out, but that leaves you feeling hollow. So there is that sense of challenge. I'll put a star on 1, but I'll look at option number 2. The trad wife's vintage dress and adherence to traditional role reveal the artificial nature of modern life and its superficial values. Okay. All right. So her vintage dress and her adherence to traditional roles, these are revealing the artificial nature of modern life. But is that what the passage said, that the dress and the roles, that is revealing the artificial nature, or it is the trad wife who's revealing? So it is the trad wife, therefore not 1. The trad wife's commitment to outdated gender roles and retro fashion critiques the superficiality of today's societal ideas. So when the trad wife is, committed to her gender roles and the retro fashion, the old vintage fashion, she is critiquing, she is analyzing the superficiality, but critiquing is not criticizing, and therefore, and also she is not really criticizing, she's bringing it out for you. So therefore 3 is also not correct. Let's look at 4. By promoting an idealized past, the trad wife exposes the artifice of contemporary values and mocks societal norms. But is again this causal relationship, can we say that just by promoting this idealized past she is able to expose the artifice of contemporary values and mocks the societal norms? Does she do these two? No, again, not really. The best option here is option number 4, because that's the one that says that the trad wife is just doing what? She is just very clearly highlighting the superficiality of this modern life. Whatever you are doing, look at this. Our just dessert served Instagram perfect by a manicured hand on a gorgeous ceramic dish with fat mouth-watering maraschino cherries on top. So you are getting this, and whatever you're getting is your just dessert, right? So therefore, 4 not so much, 1 yes. So now, like I said, these options were very close, and therefore it was slightly difficult for us to pick what the right answer is. Option number 4, I really liked as an option, but my problem was that again, this causal relationship, is that the one that she is using to expose the artifice? Not really. Okay, so therefore 4 was not a very good choice for us. Very close options. Well, that's how it is. Let's look at the passage, questions 4 to 7. This was a passage. Let's take a look. Which passage is this? Okay, so this was a very nice passage, slightly of all the passages that were there, this was the probably the toughest passage of the 4. I'm not saying that it is correct, but I'm just saying that this is one of those that was slightly tougher than the rest. Okay. All right, let's take a look at our passage. Languages become endangered and die out for many reasons. Okay, so we start out by saying that languages die out for many reasons. Okay, sadly, the physical annihilation of community. So he comes out with a sadly, says, okay, this is a problem, that the physical annihilation of communities of native speakers of a language is all too often the cause of language extinction. So when the people die, actually the people die, the language dies. In North America, European colonists brought death and destruction to the Native American communities. And then the US federal policies restricted the use of indigenous language. They removed the native children from their communities to federal boarding schools where native languages and cultural practices were prohibited. So as many as 75% of the languages that were spoken in the territories have gone extinct, right? With slightly better survival rates in Central and South America. So the first paragraph talks about the fact that, okay, so the passage talks about languages and their death. Okay. And then the first one says the physical annihilation of communities is one of the reasons that the communities die and therefore the languages die, which is what happened in the US. 75% languages died. In Central and South America, well, better survival rates than this. Okay. So the second paragraph says even without physical annihilation and prohibitions against language use, the language of dominant cultures may drive other languages into extinction. So young people see education, job, culture, technology, all of these associated with the dominant language, and then they pay attention to that language. Now, the largest language killers are English, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Russian, Hindi, and Chinese. These are all dominant languages. So the second thing that the author tells you here is that the dominant language kills the others also, right? So there is one dominant language and that will kill all the other languages of that particular region. And the third paragraph, when we lose a language, we lose the worldview. We lose the worldview and we lose the culture, knowledge, and everything of the people who spoke it. It is a loss to all humanity. People around the world live in direct contact with their native environment and their habitat. Now, when the language they speak goes extinct, the rest of the people lose their knowledge of that environment, their wisdom about the relationship between local plants and illnesses, their philosophical and religious beliefs, their native cultural expression, art, music, poetry, all of that dies, right? So essentially, the third paragraph talks about with the death of a language, also dies the culture, the indigenous knowledge, right? The indigenous society, everything, the beliefs, religions, everything dies. Okay. Then the fourth paragraph says, as educators deeply immersed in liberal arts. Okay, so now we're starting to talk about liberal arts, people who are teaching liberal arts. We believe that educating students broadly in all facets of language and culture yield immense rewards. So teach them all the facets of language and culture. Some individuals educated in liberal art tradition will pursue advanced studies in linguistics and become actively engaged in language preservation, setting out for the Amazon, for example, with video recording equipment to interview the last surviving elders in a community to record and document a language. So because we are educators in a particular stream, we understand that liberal arts are important. So sometimes somebody who studies liberal arts will just become involved in language preservation, and he may go to Amazon and he may try and record a particular language to save it. Very interesting example of the Amazon given here. Remember, all examples are question pockets. Now, certainly, though, the vast majority of students will not pursue this kind of activity. So, a lot of students will not do this. Very few will do this. Okay. For these students, a liberal art education is absolutely critical. It's very important from the twin perspectives of language extinction and global citizenship. When students study other languages other than their own, they're sensitized to the existence of different cultural perspectives. So when they learn other languages, they understand there are other perspectives, other practices. Then they're able to articulate insights into their own cultural biases, be more empathetic, communicate successfully across all sorts of differences, whether linguistic, cultural. They consider and resolve questions that reflect multiple cultural perspectives. So they understand, and they ultimately extend support to people, programs, practices, and policies that support the preservation of endangered language. So then, if you don't really go out and get into language preservation, you still understand language extinction, right? And you understand global citizenship, and then you also understand how important these things are and become more accepting and understanding of other cultures. So essentially, the fifth paragraph talks about how you become accepting and understanding of multiple cultures and their views. Okay. So multiculturalism is something that is born out of this. There is ample evidence that such preservation can work in languages spiraling towards extinction. For example, so wherever there are languages which are going extinct, such preservation can help, right? For example, Navajo, Cree, and Inuit communities have established schools in which these languages are the languages of instruction, and the number of speaker of each has increased. So if you start teaching, okay, if you start teaching people a particular language, the speakers will increase, and that will help in preservation of language. Okay, so that was your passage, the first one. Here, let's take a look at our questions. So question number 1, which says, it can be inferred from the passage that it is likely South America had a slightly better language survival rate than North America for all of the following reasons, except. Now remember, something is not the reason, that's what we're looking for. The minute it says reason plus except, okay, we are looking for something which is not a reason. Okay, not a reason for languages better survival rate in Central and South America. This is where this statement was mentioned. Okay. So let's take a look. It can be inferred from the passage that it is likely South America had a better language survival rate than North America for which of these reasons. Whatever is not the reason, that becomes your correct answer. So European colonists allowed children of native speaker to stay at home with their families. Probably this could have been a reason. So let me write reason here. Not many native speakers were killed by European colonists, could have been a reason. Locals were provided job opportunities in the colonial administration. Now, this was not one of the reasons why the North American people died. So I don't know about this. Jobs are not mentioned in the passage. Look at the fourth one. The colonial government was unable to mainstream the locals. If they were unable to mainstream the locals, then this could have been a reason why South America had a better survival rate. So the only one that is not really to be inferred from the passage has to be option number 3, and therefore that will be the correct answer. Okay, so let's understand what we did. We looked for anything that was a reason why the North Americans did not survive, the North American languages did not survive, and we inverted and we said that's probably a reason why the South American languages survived. So 1, 2 and 4 became reasons why these languages survived, the South American ones. And because 3 was not mentioned anywhere in the passage, therefore we assume that this is the one that is your correct answer. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next question. In the context of the passage, which one of the following hypothetical scenarios, if true, is not an example of the kind of loss that occurs when a language becomes extinct? Okay, so let's first understand the question. So there are many losses that occur when a language becomes extinct. We are looking for a loss that will not occur. Okay, a loss that will not occur. Okay, that's what you're looking for. Of course, this is hypothetical, but that's what we're looking for. Okay, so now if you understand the passage, we have understood that the losses can be of language, of culture, and so on, right? So we have said when we lose a language, we lose the worldview, culture, and knowledge of the people who speak it, constituting a loss to all humanity. We've understood many things. Okay. Now, the Andamanese language has a word to describe someone who has lost a stepsister. When the language dies, we will lose the concept of the word and the emotion it evokes. Well, yes, whenever a language dies, we lose the concept of that word and the emotion that it evokes. So, therefore, 1 is something that is a loss that will occur. Okay, so I'm going to cross it out. The Inuits of Alaska have 35 different words to describe the texture of snow. So when the language becomes extinct, we will lose that understanding of the nature. Yes. So we will lose of all the different types of snow. Okay. So their wisdom about, their knowledge about the environment is something that we will lose. So therefore 2 is also a type of loss that is mentioned. The Nicobarese language describes 20 different moods of the ocean. By the time the last speaker is educated in a central board school, they will have forgotten their language. Okay, now look at this. The language is describing 20 different moods of the ocean. So if the last speaker is educated, they will have forgotten their language. Is also a loss that will occur because somebody will die, the language will die. The Lamkangs of Manipur have only 3 remaining native speakers. When they die, we will lose 1 more group from the government list of indigenous tribes. But this is not talking about the loss of a language becoming extinct, right? This is talking about the death of 1 group of people. Okay, so 4 is the only one that does not talk about the loss from a language loss, right? When a language dies, what's the loss? This is just talking about the death of 1 group of people. So therefore 4 is the only one that can be your answer. Again, this was a very close, very tight question. Good question. Very interesting. I hope you got that. So I hope you got this one. Let's go to the next question. Question number 3 in this set. Which of the following would hypothetically most strongly undermine the central idea of the passage? Well, what is the central idea of this passage? That languages die for many reasons, and if you are able to give liberal arts education, then people will start trying to preserve the language, try to understand the language, and try to help, make more people speak it. So I'm looking at something that will undermine the central idea of this passage. Let's take a look. A liberal arts education requires that in addition to being fluent in English, students gain fluency in 2 of the top 5 most spoken languages. Now, this one says that if you're trying to gain fluency in the most spoken languages, then you are actually working towards building the dominant language. Okay, so this actually strengthens the idea in the passage, right? That language dies, and there can be languages which die. They will kill the because of the death of the language, there will be the death of the culture also, and that there are some dominant languages, and because of those also other languages die. So this is actually going to strengthen the idea in the passage that we have. Okay, let's look at the second one. Schools that teach endangered languages can preserve the language only for a generation. Now, if you look at this, now option number 2 here very clearly says that schools that teach endangered languages can preserve the language only for a generation. Okay, my thought, okay, guys, I think I'm getting this one wrong for some reason. Let me quickly take you back to this question and understand this question once again. So we'll try and see. Okay. So which one of the following hypothetical scenarios would most strongly undermine the central idea of the passage? So I'm trying to undermine the central idea. Let's rewrite the central idea and then take it from there. Central idea is languages when they die. Okay, it's the death of a culture. Okay, when a language dies, it is the death of a culture. Okay, and any other thing that is there is that if you give a liberal arts education, then that will lead to increase in preservation of the language, right? So that is what the passage is all about. Now, if we take a look at this and try and see which one of the following scenarios would most strongly undermine the central idea. So I'm looking at something that weakens it. I was looking at option number 1 and then I thought, no, this is not correct. A liberal arts education requires that in addition to being fluent in language, students gain fluency in 2 of the top 5 most spoken languages. So then what they're doing is they're actually causing the death of the culture, right? Because they are now studying a dominant language. So this one is actually talking about the same thing, that you will be able to kill the language. Okay, let's look at option number 2. I'm not taking a decision now. Schools that teach endangered languages can preserve the language only for a generation. Well, even if you preserve the language only for a generation, you've still preserved it. So this does not weaken the central idea at all. Recording a dying language that only has a few remaining speakers freezes it in time and it stops evolving further, but you've still saved it, you've still preserved it. So therefore 3 also does not weaken the thought of the passage or does not undermine the central idea. Most liberal arts students will pursue jobs in publishing and human resource management rather than doctorates in linguistics. But you don't have to have a doctorate in linguistics to help preserve. Even if you have a job in publishing or HR, you could still be more empathetic towards other language cultures. So therefore 4 is also not something that weakens the central idea of this passage, that a liberal arts education can help you preserve it. So the only one that can be the correct answer is option number 1, which is saying that if you have a liberal arts education, you are gaining fluency in the dominant language, and because of that dominant language that you're learning, the other languages will die. So therefore 1 is the correct answer here. The 1 is the only one that will undermine the central idea of this passage. Let's look at the next question. This one says the author believes that a liberal arts education combined with participation in language preservation empowers students in all of the following ways except. So you're looking for something which does not empower a student, right? So look for a way that does not empower a student, and that will be your correct answer. So option number 1 says they establish schools to preserve languages spiraling towards extinction. But if they establish schools to preserve languages which are spiraling towards extinction, I'm going to say that this might help them to preserve the language. Okay, let me put a star on option number 1. Overcome cultural barriers to communication. Well, this is a way that the student is going to be empowered. So I'm going to cross out 2. Develop a better understanding of their own culture is also a way that a student will be empowered. So I will cut this out. Look at 3. If they will learn different languages, then they are also empowered by learning and understanding other cultures. So 3 is also an empowerment. 4, which says they will establish schools to preserve languages spiraling towards extinction, does not really empower a student. Okay, it may help preserve a language, but is it empowering students? Not really. So the correct answer here will be option number 4. Now, again, this was one of the tricky questions that you had to, pay attention to. Otherwise, you would have simply eliminated option 1 just the way that I was trying to eliminate it. My mind went, okay, this is also a way of empowering. But this is a way, option number 1 is how you can preserve a language. It is not how you empower a student. So therefore not 1. So therefore 1 will be the correct answer, how you do not empower a student. Okay, I hope you got that. Let's go to question number 8. Here we are. Okay, this is a sentence placement. Many have had to leave their homes behind, with more than 1.3 million people being displaced due to the drought. Okay. Oh, this was a nice one, I think, huh? So let's take a look. Somalia has been dealing with an enormous humanitarian catastrophe driven by the longest and most severe drought in the country. Okay, experienced in the last 40 years. 5 consecutive rainy seasons have failed, causing more than 8 million people to experience acute food insecurity. Okay, now the first sentence of the passage starts by introducing the fact that there is a huge drought and a long drought. Okay, then you go there, then you continue, the author continues and says that 5 consecutive seasons have not had rain. So blank number 1 is not a place where you would put this sentence. Okay, because remember, it's talking about the people. So here we were, the first 2 sentences, we are talking about the drought itself. More than 43,000 people are believed to have lost their lives. Okay, with half of the lives lost likely being children under 5. Okay, the damage the drought has caused is far reaching. Okay, so now we are seeing that lots of people have died, and interestingly, big drought loss, big damage has happened. Then we come to blank number 3. Okay, and then we continue and say farmers have lost all their agricultural income, while pastoralists have lost more than 3 million livestock, impoverishing entire communities and leaving them on the brink of famine. Then the next one says, some, like the pastoralist, may never be able to go back as their livelihoods have been irreversibly wiped out. Now, if you look at this, we start with, so after blank 3, we say the impact, the damage is far reaching. And then he says the farmers have lost their agricultural income. And then he says pastoralists have lost 3 million livestock, more than 3 million animals. So the communities have become impoverished. People are on the brink of famine. Then we say some, like the pastoralists, may never be able to go back. Here is where my connection between many and some happen. That many have had to leave their homes behind, and then the some pastoralists may never be able to go back. So here is the connection, that many have left their homes behind and some may never be able to go back. Okay, and here is this very beautiful connection between many who have left and some will never be able to come back. So therefore, blank 4 is the place where I would like to put my sentence. Therefore, blank 4, option number 2, here you are, your correct answer. I hope you got that. This was one of the easier questions in this set, and therefore one of those that you should have definitely done. All right, let's go to the next one. Okay, so the next one again is a reading comprehension, questions 9 to 12. We will take a moment and look at these questions. First, let us look at the passage. Okay, so this one is okay. This is a very interesting one. We're sending bacteria out to space. And this was a very lovely passage. So there is a group in space community who view the solar system not as an opportunity to expand human potential, but as a nature preserve, forever the provenance of an elite group of scientists and their sanitary robotic probes. These planetary protection advocates call for avoiding harmful contamination of celestial bodies. Under this regime, NASA incurs great expense sterilizing robotic probes in order to prevent the contamination of entirely theoretical biospheres. Okay, so we start by saying that there are some people who don't want to contaminate space. Okay. They don't want to contaminate space. And because they don't want to contaminate space, they're saying that let's clean up everything that we send outside. Transporting bacteria would matter if Mars were the vital world once imagined by astronomers who mistook optical illusions for canals. Nobody wants to expose Martians to measles, but sadly, robotic explorations reveal a bleak, rusted landscape, lacking oxygen and flooded with radiation, ready to sterilize any athlete. So whatever microbes you will send, they will get sterilized. So no worries about that. Simple life might exist underground or down at the bottom of a deep canyon, but it's been very hard to find. So I've not found any life on Mars. So the upsides from human exploration and development of Mars clearly outweigh the welfare of a purely speculative Martian fungi. So the second paragraph says apparently there are no life on Mars. Okay, so you work for improve human lives on Mars and don't bother about the fungi on Mars. That's the second paragraph. The other likely targets of human exploration. So one, Mars. Then we come to our moon and the asteroids. They exist in a vacuum and extreme temperature variations that will kill anything, almost anything. So you have to also pay attention that it's very important that it's just not just America that is going now. There are other countries and they will ignore the demands. They will not bother. So for example, China sent a terrarium to the moon and germinated a plant seed. And there was no protest from their scientific community. Nobody in China dared to say anything. When it was recently revealed that a researcher had smuggled super resilient microscopic tardigrades abroad the Israeli Bereshit lunar probe, there was a firestorm. So now this very interesting is that on moon and asteroids, there is no life. Okay. On moon, etc. Then he says that the vacuum and temperature will kill everything. right? The vacuum and temperature will kill everything. So why worry? Also, he says that only US is worried. Other countries, for example, China, doesn't care, and there is no protest, right? Then he says NASA's previous human explorations effort made no serious attempt at sterility, and there was no notice also, little notice. As the Mars expert Zubrin noted in the National Review, US lunar landings did not leave the campsite any cleaner. Apollo's bacteria infested litter had bags of feces also. They just threw that, forcing NASA's proposed Mars exploration to do better. Scrubbing everything and hauling out all the trash would destroy NASA's human exploration budget and encroach on the agency's other directorates too. Getting future astronauts off to Mars is enough of a challenge without trying to carry, weeks of waste. So the fourth paragraph essentially is saying that earlier we have not had any efforts at sterility. Okay. So why bother now? Okay, let's focus on getting people to Mars. Let's not focus on carrying their shit also. Then the fifth paragraph, a reasonable compromise is to continue on the course laid out by the US government and the National Research Council, which proposes a system of zones on Mars. Some for science, some for habitation, some for resource exploitation. So this will maximize exploration, minimize contamination. So Mars presents a stark choice of diverging human futures. We can turn inward, pursuing limited future, and alternatively we can just propel our biosphere further into the solar system, protecting our home planet and providing a backup plan for whatever life we have. Are the lives on earth worth less than some hypothetical microbe lurking under the Martian rocks? So let's focus on exploration and not bother about other life forms. Okay, that is what he is saying. Not bother about other life forms. So that's your passage number 2. Let's take a look at our questions. So the first question, the author's overall tone in the first paragraph. What is the tone in the first paragraph? The first paragraph, he spoke about these evangelists who are trying to, make sure that the outer space is protected. Okay. So is he approving about the amount of money that NASA spends? Well, the passage did not really speak about how much NASA is spending to restrict the spread of contamination. It did speak of that, but it was not mentioned in a very approving way or anything. So therefore, not one. He is equivocal. Equivocal means he is not really very clear about the reasons extended by groups of scientists seeking to limit space exploration. Not mentioned, not equivocal at all. He was skeptical about the excessive efforts to sanitize planets where life has not yet been proven to exist. Yes, he is saying that these planetary protection advocates, very funny, huh? Okay. So yes, it could be skeptical. I'll put a star on this. He's indifferent to the elitism of a few scientists aiming to corner space exploration, but he does not talk about these scientists who are just aiming to corner space exploration. So 4 is incorrect. So the best answer for us will be option number 3, that he is skeptical. He says also, look at this, there is a group in space community who are viewing the solar system as a nature preserve forever. The provenance, the control of an elite group of scientists and their sanitary robotic probes. Very mocking, very skeptical. He says these people are, calling for avoiding harmful contamination of celestial bodies. That's probably not possible. So therefore 3, that's your best answer. All right, let's look at the next question. Question number 2, the contrasting reactions to Chinese and Israeli contaminations of lunar space. So the Chinese, nobody said a word. Israel, everybody made a big hue and cry. So these are evidences of China's reasonable approach. But does China have a reasonable approach? Not really. says very clearly that China sent a terrarium and they went out and did whatever they wanted to. Nobody cared. So it's not evidence of China's reasonable approach. So let's eliminate one. Let's look at two. Reveal global biases prevalent in attitudes towards different countries. Do we have different attitudes towards different countries? No, it's that the country itself did not bother only. So therefore you could not say anything. Are valid, the reactions are valid, as the contamination of lunar environment from animal sources is far greater from plant sources. We don't know if which contamination is greater, and this is not the reason for the contrasting reactions also, and it's not valid. So eliminate. Look at 4. Indicate that national scientists may have different sensitivities to issues of biosphere protection. Yes, the Chinese scientists did not say anything. The Israelis and the Americans went and made such a huge hue and cry. So 4, yes, is the correct answer for us. Okay. All right, let's look at the next question. Question number 3, the author is unlikely to disagree with any of the following except. Now look at this. Unlikely, disagree, and accept. So I'm going to just eliminate unlikely and disagree, except. So I know that the author is going to disagree with one of these. Which one is he going to disagree with? That's going to be our answer. Okay. So that while NASA's earlier missions were not ideal in their contamination, in their approach to space contamination, they likely did no grave damage. This is something that he has said in the last paragraph, right? So he will agree with this. The proposal for a zonal segregation of Martian landscape into regions for different purposes, again, is something that he will agree with, because he's also mentioned that in the last paragraph. The exorbitant cost of continuing to keep the space environment pristine may be unsustainable. And again, this is something he will agree with. He has said this here in the 4th paragraph. Space contamination should be minimized until the possibility of life on astronomical body being explored is ruled out. He did not say anything like this. So this should be my answer. This is the one that he will disagree with. You can't stop space contamination, keep it minimized till you rule out all space being explored and there being no life forms. That's not possible. Therefore, D is the one that is your correct answer. Now, this one you have to be a little careful, because of course 3 negatives: unlikely, disagree, and accept. So pay attention. All right, let's look at the next question. The author mentions all of the following reasons to dismiss concerns about contaminating Mars, except. So which one he mentions all of these to dismiss concern, except. So the one that he does not mention, right? That's your answer. So which one he does not mention? Let's take a look. Efforts to contain contamination on Mars are likely to be derailed as competitor countries may not follow similar restrictions. Yes, we spoke about China, so he does mention, so cannot be my answer. Earlier explorations have already contaminated pristine space environment. He's mentioned it, so not to. The lack of evidence on living organisms on Mars makes possible contamination a moot point. So yes, he's already mentioned it. You've already gone and contaminated. So why bother now? The use of similar probes on astronomical bodies like the moon have had little effect on the environment. He's not mentioned any probes and their use having little effect on the environment. So 4 is the one that he's not mentioned. Therefore, your correct answer. Okay, I hope you got that. All right, let's look at question number 13. Here we are. Okay, again, passage completion. Let's take a look. So this reality is putting stress on employees who have to pay for transport, desk lunches, more childcare, clothing, and after-work socialization costs they haven't incurred for nearly 2 years. What is this cost that they haven't incurred? It is the cost of coming back to office, right? Let's take a look. Prices are rising at their fastest rate in 40 years. Consequently, so I'm just going to mark this reality. Consequently, return to office related costs have shot up. Think petrol and food, for instance. Yet wages haven't kept up. I know that these two sentences make such a beautiful tight pair. So blank 2, nothing, blank 1, nothing. I'm eliminating. So I've eliminated this and this. Yet wages haven't kept up with inflation, even despite the salary growth many workers who have enjoyed during a favorable pandemic labor market. So wages are not matching with the inflation. This is especially jarring for workers who were able to save during remote work when these expenditures weren't a factor. How beautiful these expenditures. What are these expenditures? The expenditures that are mentioned here: transport, lunch, childcare, clothing, socialization, so on, these expenditures. Isn't that a beautifully created set? So the answer has to be option number 3. And that's your answer, blank number 3. 4 cannot be there because we've already found such a beautiful answer here. So option 3, blank 3, that's your correct answer. Don't go all ballistic on me because, ma'am, you have not explained why not option 4, because 3 is so beautifully fit there. Okay. All right, let's go to the next question. Okay, the next is again a set of RCs. Let's take a look. Which one is this? Oh, fear of AI. Okay, I like this one. So fears of AI have haunted humanity since the beginning of the computer age. Hitherto, till now, these fears focused on machines using physical means to kill, enslave, or replace people. But over the past few years, new tools have emerged that threaten the survival of human civilization from an unexpected direction. Oh, that's interesting. Now we are talking about something unexpected. What is this unexpected direction? Okay, AI has gained some remarkable abilities to manipulate and generate language, whether with words, sounds, or images. And hereby, AI has thereby hacked the operating system of our civilization. So the first paragraph tells you that AI has hacked language, which is how our civilization works. That's the first paragraph. Language is the stuff almost all human culture is made of. Okay, everything that we have. Human rights are not inscribed in our DNA. Okay, they're cultural artifacts that we created by telling stories and by writing laws. Gods are not physical realities. They're cultural artifacts we created by creating these myths and writing the stories. So human rights, gods, what would happen once a non-human intelligence becomes better than average human at telling stories, composing melodies, drawing images, and writing laws and scriptures? They will do everything that we are doing. When people think about ChatGPT and other new AI tools, they will be drawn to the example of children using AI to write their essays. What will you do in school when the children use AI? But this is the small picture. Look at the big one. The big one, American presidential race in 2024, we just have it. And imagine the impact of AI tools that will mass produce political content, fake news, scriptures for new cards. My goodness. So AI is going to rewrite everything and will create such fake stories, such believable fake stories that we'll have no way to not accept it. Through its mastery of language, AI could even form intimate relationships with people and use the power of intimacy to change our opinions and worldviews. Although there is no indication that AI has any consciousness or feelings to foster fake intimacy, it is enough if AI can make them feel emotionally attached. So now the third problem is that people will become emotionally attached to AI. And then they will do whatever AI wants them to do. That's what happens, no? Okay. What will happen to the course of history? What will happen to history when AI takes over culture and begins to produce stories, melodies, everything? Previous tools like the printing press and radios helped spread the cultural idea of humans, but they did not create new cultural ideas of their own. Now, AI can create a culture. It can create completely new ideas, new culture. Now, you can use AI for good, but there are lots of people who already speak about it. So author will not speak about the good of. So author is just very negatively inclined about AI. Right? He's saying that. I'm not dwelling on this. There could be good uses, but we are not. So AI is taking over history. Very bad. Then in the fifth paragraph, we can still regulate the new AI tools. Okay, author is saying, okay, we can still regulate, but we must act quickly. Okay, here is the author's caution. He's saying we must act quickly. Now, nukes cannot invent more powerful nukes. AI can create more powerful AI. So, if you are using it unregulatedly, there will be social chaos. So, autocrats will benefit, democracies will be ruined. Now, democracy is a conversation. Conversation happens due to language. So, when the language is hacked, conversation is going to be hacked. So, democracy is going to be destroyed. So the first rule author is saying is that make it mandatory for AI to disclose that it is an AI. If I'm having a conversation and I don't know if it is human or AI, I need to know. So therefore, and then he says this text has been generated by a human or has it? And then he says, okay, I don't know. So AI rules have to come. And the first one is to disclose that it is AI. Right? Now that's your passage. Very scary, just gives me the jitters as to what AI is going to do to us. All right. We can infer that the author is most likely to agree with which of the following statements. Okay, let's take a look. So, which of these is the author going to agree with? The commonly expressed fear that future AI developments will fatally harm humans is unfounded. Okay. All right. So, the commonly expressed fear that future AI developments will fatally harm humans is unfounded. No author is saying it is. There is a fear. Okay. One of the biggest casualties of the spread of unregulated AI is likely to be the democratic process. Yes, he said that in the last paragraph. So, he will definitely agree with you. People's fear of the dangers of students using ChatGPT are unfounded. No, he will not agree with this. He will say they are founded, they are based on realities. Apart from its drawbacks, AI tools have been beneficial in boosting technological and industrial advance. Author has not mentioned any of this. He doesn't like that. So the correct answer is going to be 2. Very clearly from the passage. The last part of the passage very clearly says that democracy will be destroyed. Okay. Look at the next question. The author terms language the operating system of our civilization for all of the following reasons except. So why doesn't he call it the operating system? Look for that reason. So it is fundamental to the articulation and spread of human values and culture. Yes, this is one of the reasons. So cannot be my answer. Okay. Can influence political views and opinions as it engenders close emotional ties among people is one of the reasons. So eliminate. Is the basis of AI tools like ChatGPT, which can be used to generate academic content and opinion, but that's not the reason why it is the operating system of the civilization. So not a reason. So this is a possible answer. Let me look at 4. Has laid the foundation for creation of cultural artifacts through writing and telling of stories. Yes, in the second paragraph, we said that human rights, gods, these are all realities that have been created. So this is also a reason. So cannot be my answer. So my best answer is going to be option number 3, that language is the operating system of our civilization for reason 1, 2, and 4, and not 3. So that's your answer. The author identifies all of the following as dire outcomes of the capture of language by AI, except. So all of these are dire outcomes except. So something is not a dire outcome, right? Let's take a look. Let's eliminate all the dire outcomes, and then whatever is remaining will be my correct answer. So it could outstrip human creativity and endeavors in spheres such as art and music and in the formulation of law. Yes, this is a dire outcome, so cannot be my answer. It can eventually subvert democratic processes through mass creation and spread of fake political content and news. Yes, dire outcome. I'll eliminate. It could spawn a completely new culture through its ability to create new ideas and opinion. Yes, dire outcome. Apply its mastery of language to create strong emotional ties, which could exacerbate the polarization of political views. But this is not a dire outcome that is mentioned in the passage. So therefore, 4 then becomes my correct answer. Okay. All right. Let's look at the next one, the tone of the passage. So there were two tone questions this time, which is divergent from the previous 3-4 years. We've had a tone question, but all the time that we teach you tone has really helped. So the tone of the passage is alarmist, quizzical, prescient, and cautionary. Now, alarmist is something that says that I'm trying to raise alarm, I'm trying to warn you, I'm being a lot of, I'm creating a lot of hullabaloo about that. Because the passage discusses scenarios of influence of new AI tools on language and human emotions. Yes, but was he really causing a lot of alarm in the passage? I don't know. I'll put a star on this. Quizzical, as the passage poses several questions. Quizzical, he's doubting himself, he's asking questions. No, the tone of the passage is not quizzical at all. Prescient, prescient means predictive. As the author analyzes the future impact of the use of new tools on crucial areas of our society. Again, he was not being prescient here. Cautionary, because he lays out some adverse effect of proliferation of unregulated AI tools. Yes, 4 is the correct answer. I think between 1 and 4, the second part of option 4 is a much better answer, because the author does lay out some adverse effect of the proliferation of the unregulated AI tools. He does not discuss the scenarios of influence of new AI tool on language and human emotions. He does not talk about those scenarios later. So between 1 and 4, I think 4 is a better choice of tone. He is cautionary everywhere. He says AI could be used for good purposes. I won't dwell on this because people who develop AI talk about it enough. And then he says this text has been generated by a human, or has it? So that's where the cautionary tone comes in. All right, let's look at question number 18. Okay, this is a summary question. Again, let's take a look. Humans have managed to tweak the underlying biology of various plants and animals to produce high-tech crops and microbes. Okay, so we're talking about biology to produce crops and microbes. Okay, tweaking of biology. But regulating these entities is complicated. So, regulation is complicated. He clearly says that. Why? Because the policies are outdated and not flexible. So policies are outdated and not flexible. Okay, so we say that the policies are outdated and not flexible. The question is whether regulation will ever be able to keep up with human innovation to regulate living things, which are apt to be unpredictable and unique, to capture all the potential risk when new biological entities are introduced or when they pass on variations of their genes. So the question is, can regulation keep up with all the changes? Right? So these are the 3 things that this passage talks about. Okay, let's take a look at our options and let's see if any of the options will work for us. Current regulation of biotechnology is outdated, but it is debatable if we can create a framework, imaginative and flexible, to cover all contingencies in this fast changing area. Okay, so we are talking about biotechnology. We've changed crops, we've changed microbes. Regulation is complicated, but can it keep up? Okay, so I think we've covered all the points, but let's look at other options also. So option number 2 says the problem with formulating regulation for innovation in the scientific arena. Too broad, because are we only talking about innovation in the scientific arena? Okay, and which one? Because we were specifically talking about biology. of humans and animals and all of that, and plants, that it is impossible to imagine the outcomes, and it is not impossible to imagine. So too extreme. So therefore, 2 I'll not take as an answer. I'm going to eliminate it. A new framework of rules and procedures for regulating the most recent research emerging from biotechnology is urgently needed to keep up with this rapidly changing discipline. Yes, but we did not speak about what in biotechnology. The first 2 points we've missed out altogether, right? So 3 is incomplete, does not cover 2 of my points out of 3. The mercurial nature of biological entities calls for scientists to shape the regulations governing emerging technology with regular calibration to handle variations. Now, this one is a suggestion, okay, that, and also the suggestion is based on the mercurial nature of biological entities. They're not, the nature is not mercurial. It is just that they have changed, and to regulate each one of them is difficult. So to say that it is mercurial nature is something that is beyond the scope of this passage. So not 4. So the best answer here will be option number 1, and that, well, I hope you did get that. Okay, question number 19. Let's take a look. Okay, so here are 5 sentences. 4 of them can be put together to form a coherent passage. You identify the odd sentence and key in the number. So this is an odd one out. You just have to identify which sentence will be the sequence, which one is the odd one out. All right. Let's take a moment, read the sentences, and then we'll take the question. So let's look at these sentences. The first one says to create a synapse. The neuron has specialized structures, often seen as tiny swellings at its terminal end of the axon, where it stores the chemicals that are emitted to transmit a signal to the next neuron. This fetal warm-up act, the soldering of neural connections before the eyes actually function, is crucial to the performance of the visual system. Okay, you're soldering the neural connections. That's crucial. The reason for this paring back of synapses is a mystery, but synaptic pruning is thought to sharpen and reinforce the correct synapses while removing the weak and unnecessary ones. Okay, so you're cutting out some of the synapses so that you get the correct ones. Neural connection between the eye and the brain are formed long before birth, establishing the wiring and the circuitry that allows a child to begin visualizing the world the minute he or she opens their eyes. During this rehearsal period, synapses between nerve cells are generated in great extent, only to be pruned back during later development. So I do see some connections. The pruning you're talking about in sentence 3, in sentence 5, you're talking about a connection, right? So that pruning happens earlier, and then it is sharpening it. Okay, why it happens, we don't know. Also, the paragraph should ideally start with 4, which says neural connections have to, they're formed long before birth, so that the child is able to see the world, visualize it the minute it emerges from the womb. And then this fetal warm-up act is crucial to the performance of the visual system. So 4 to 5, 3 apparently all form this very beautiful set, and the odd one out, which talks about how the synapse is created, would be the odd one out. So fourth sentence number 1, which talks about how synapse is created, right? That's the odd sentence. That's the odd sentence. The other sentences all sort of talk about how the child will open their eyes and start viewing the world, and how synaptic pruning will help the child to better the view and have the correct, functionings of the nerves and all of that. So 4, 2 and 5, 3, these become a pair, and 1 then becomes the odd one out. All right, I hope you got that. Okay, questions 20 to 23 is again a passage. Let's take a look. Now, this was a very interesting passage. I liked it. Motai has been a global booze sensation of the decade. What is Motai? It's a booze, it's sensational for the decade. A bottle of its Flying Fairy, which was selling in the 1980s for $1, now retails for $400. Its shares have soared by almost 600%, outpacing even Amazon. Oh, wow, very interesting. Okay, so we start by talking about Motai and we say that it's doing very well. Okay, we've understood it's a boost. It does this while disregarding every Western marketing mantra. Oh, they don't care. It's not global. It has very small digital sales, does not appeal to millennials. Its course, so it doesn't do anything on environment, social, and government measures. In the Boy Scout world of Western business, it would leave a bad taste in more than one ways. So the second paragraph says it's a renegade. It's doing something that others are not. Okay? It's not global. It has very little sales. All the Western marketing mantras are disregarded. Right? Disregarded. All the marketing rules. Okay. The third paragraph. Motai owes its intoxicating success to three factors. And not all of them are easy to emulate. Okay. First, it's profits from Chinese nationalism. Oh, so I belong to a country. It is known as the national liquor. It was used to raise spirit and disinfect wounds in Mao's Long March. It was Premier Zhao and Lai's favorite tipple, shared with Richard Nixon in 1972. It's centuries-old craftsmanship. It is distilled 8 times and stored for years in earthenware jars. Is a source of national pride. It also claims to be hangover proof, which would make it an invention to rival gunpowder. What an interesting one. I just remembered something. So I'm just going to mark this out very beautifully. So the first reason, nationalism. Okay, reason one, nationalism. Okay. Chinese thing. Second, it chose to serve China's super rich rather than the middle class. Okay, so this is exclusivity, right? The second reason is it is serving the rich or the super rich. Markets are littered with corpses of firms that could not compete in the cutthroat battle for the Chinese middle class. And the country's premium market is massive. Okay, 73 million strong, bigger than the population of France. An investment firm is noting this, and still less crowded with prestige brands. So they have fewer prestige brands. Motai is that. Okay. Then the third reason, it looks beyond millennials and digital natives. It is looking at elderly and the middle aged. So it's the third reason is the takers are the elderly and the middle age. It's not the youngsters that it is targeting. So target audience is very different. Okay, its biggest market now is male drinkers in their mid 30s. Many have no siblings, which also means elderly parents can splash out on weddings and banquets. And Motai is often served as a guest of honor. So people are getting it. Okay. Motai has succeeded thanks to nationalism, elitism, and ageism. In other words, not in spite of this unholy trinity. So, unholy trinity is what? Nationalism, ageism, and elitism. Right? These are the three things that are the unholy trinity. But it faces risks. So, there are risks. What are the risks we are talking about? Let's pay attention to these. The first is that the government is the largest shareholder and a meddlesome one. It appears to want prices to remain stable, exorbitantly priced booze is at odds with its professed socialist ideals. So they want the prices to be cheap. Yet minority investors lament that Motai's wholesale price is a third of what it sells for in shops. So the wholesale price could be raised and it would boost the company's profit. Instead, in what some see as a travesty means a mockery of corporate governance. The majority owner is government, so they want to set up its own sales channel and not help the people, the investors. Okay, so that's the travesty. Okay, so the price could go up, but that's not happening. Okay, so failure reasons why it could fail. Number one is government and its interference. What a lovely passage this is. Huh? In the long run, its biggest risk may be millennials. Okay, so I'm writing failure number two, millennials. Now, once the millennials grow older, health concerns, work life balance, and desire for more wholesome pursuits rather than binge drinking may curb the Ganbei toasting culture, the heavy drinking, on which so much of the demand for Motai is resting. For the time being, though, the party carries on, so the party is happening. So it's the millennials and their lifestyle issues, okay, that may just stop this drinking, heavy drinking that is happening. All right, what an interesting passage this was. Okay, let's take a look at our question. Question number one. In the context of the passage, it is most likely that author refers to Motai's marketing strategy as the unholy trinity. We spoke about this. He said, Motai has succeeded thanks to nationalism, elitism, and ageism, and not in spite of this holy trinity. Okay. So why is he talking about this? Because he says that all the Western marketing mantras have been denied here. Okay. So why does the author refer to their Motai's marketing strategy? Because it contradicts the Western strategy. I'll put a star on this. Yes, it does. It profits from Chinese nationalist feeling. Yes, but that's not why the Trinity. So this is only one of the three, right? So therefore, I'm going to eliminate two. There is nothing holy about marketing techniques. Well, we were not talking about religion. Please understand. This is only metaphorical. So eliminate three. It exposes the firm to long-term risk. Yes, but this is not the benefit. It is the reason for failure. So eliminate. So marketing strategy, unholy trinity, cause for success. Uh, None of those are here. So therefore, the correct answer will be option number one. Okay. The Holy Trinity would have been the things that you did. Unholy Trinity is nationalism, elitism, and ageism, which is opposed to the Western marketing mantra. Okay, so answer will be one. Let's look at the second one. In the context of the passage, we can infer that to succeed in the liquor industry in China, a marketing firm must consider all of the following factors that affect the Chinese liquor market, except. So, which factor should not be considered? Okay. The factor to not be considered, that's going to be your answer. Right? Please understand which factor has not to be considered. So let's take a look. Government may control the pricing of products. That's a factor that you have to consider. So I'm going to write a factor here and eliminate. There is money to be made from marketing to the middle class is not a factor that we are worried about, or not a factor that is mentioned in the context of the passage. The competition for winning over the middle class is very stiff. Yes, this was one of the factors that the author has mentioned in the passage. So cannot be my answer. There are few competitors to meet the demand of high-end liquor consumers. Yes, the author has said that Motai is one of those very few. So therefore, 4 also is a factor that you have to consider. So something that's not a factor to be considered is option number 2, and therefore your correct answer. All right, let's look at the next one. Which of the following is both a reason for Motai's success and a possible threat to that success? Okay, so its appeal to the rich is not a threat, so therefore not one. Government's involvement in its business, um, okay, is one of the threats. Okay, so now this, okay, let's rewrite it. I'm going to give you a very clearer idea. So the first one is a reason for its success. Let me write success here. The second one, government's involvement, is a threat. Okay, so I'm going to write threat here. its appeal to the older age group is a reason for its success. We have said that. But it is also a reason for, or it's also a threat. Okay. Chinese love of liquor filled celebration is a reason for its success, weddings and so on. So the only one which is both a reason for success and a possible threat is option number 3. And that is going to be the correct answer. Okay. All right. Let's go to the next question. Question number 4. The phrase would make it an invention to rival gunpowder is used in a sense. Okay. So I had marked this out somewhere in the previous slide. Let's take a look. I'm going to highlight this. It also claims to be hangover proof, which would make it an invention to rival gunpowder. Now here, what figure of speech has the author used? Now here he has used a metaphor. Why has he used a metaphor, or how? He's comparing the fact that Motai is hangover proof, making it an invention which is as great as the gunpowder. So he's saying that, oh, the features of Motai make it similar to gunpowder. Okay, so the similarity is given, but the word of similarity is not given. So therefore, metaphorical. Synonymical would mean that they are synonyms, but gunpowder is not synonymous to Motai, so not to. Substantive again would not work, because when we are talking of substantive, so when we say substantive, we are saying something that is based in reality. Now here, how is it based in reality? We don't know. So therefore 3 would not work. And literal, of course, means actual. So again, literal would not work. The only one that would work is metaphorical. Very interesting in the sense that, again, figure of speech coming back to cat after a long time. So therefore, that was the interesting thing. All right, we'll come to the last question of the set. Here we are, odd one out, the second odd one out. There were only 2 theta questions in this set. So this is the one. Let's take a look and let's try and read and solve. Part of the appeal of forecasting is not just that it seems to work, but that you don't seem to need specialized expertise to succeed at it. So the appeal of forecasting is spoken about in the first statement, that it works and you don't need expertise to succeed at it. The second one says the tight connection between forecasting and building a model of the world helps explain why so much of the early interest in the idea came from the intelligence community. Okay. This was true even though the latter had access to classified intelligence. Who are the latter and what is this? That is true. One frequently cited study found that accurate forecasters' prediction of geopolitical events, okay, when aggregated using standard scientific methods, were more accurate than the forecast of the members of the US intelligence community. Okay, so people who don't have specialized knowledge were doing better. The aggregate opinion of non-experts doing forecasting have proven to be a better guide than the aggregated opinion of experts. Oh, that's interesting. So now I start seeing options 5 and 4 coming together, right? Because 5 says non-experts doing forecasting is a better guide than experts. And then example is given in a study. So 5 and 4 sort of become a set. And then 3 follows, because this was true even though the latter had access to classified intelligence. So 3 sort of follows this 5-4 set. And then option 1, which talks about forecasting and its appeal, and that you don't need specialized knowledge, right? So 1, 5, 4, 3 then all become a set. And option number 2, which talk about forecasting and building a model of the world, then becomes the odd one out, or the answer that you're looking for. All right, I hope I've been able to explain these questions to you. For any more help, any more ideas, any more questions, feel free to drop a comment in the chat box or to us, right? Thank you so much. Of course, you can send a message to any of these numbers or send a message on the telegram or any other channels. Thank you so much, guys. I hope this was helpful. I will see you on the other side with some more analysis.